John chapter 1. It is very clear in John chapter 1 that the Apostle John is playing off of Genesis chapter 1. That he's contrasting Genesis 1 with Jesus. So before we look at John 1:1, let's look at Genesis to remind us. And Genesis 1:1-4, the very first verses of the Bible, actually to me is the whole gospel right here. So right from the beginning, we are given the gospel. In the beginning, God. In the beginning, God. He created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So the earth was created, but it was in darkness. The Spirit of God was active, hovering over the earth that was in darkness. And then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. And then he separated the light from the darkness. So let me give you the spiritual thing here. And it's kind of where we're at now. Well, if you look at verse 1 of John chapter 1, in the beginning, so he's using the same exact phrase as in Genesis. In the beginning was the Word. As opposed to in Genesis, it says, in the beginning was God. But what we need to realize is it wasn't just God the Father in the beginning. It was God the Father, the Holy Spirit is there, and Jesus is there. So verse 1, in the beginning was the Word. And the Word, that's Jesus, is the Word. And the Word was with God, and the Word what? Was God. So actually in the beginning was the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit were all in the beginning. Verse 3, through him all things were made. So some have compared that the Father is the architect and Jesus is the builder. So he was with God in the beginning, verse 3, through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it or understood it. So Jesus actually created everything that there is. In Colossians chapter 1, for in him, in Jesus, all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible. Whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is head of the body, the church. So Jesus, in the beginning, was God. In the beginning was the Word, Jesus. In the beginning, the Holy Spirit was hovering. Now, in the beginning, the earth was in darkness. I want you to know that the earth is in spiritual darkness. When John's writing this, the earth has been in spiritual darkness. Oh yes, the Holy Spirit had been moving through the Old Testament. The Holy Spirit that lifts up Jesus, the Holy Spirit that brings conviction of sin and righteousness and judgment. But the earth is in spiritual darkness. And God said, let there be light. I'm going to send my son Jesus to be a light for truth. And I'm going to send him into the dark world. And between the light and the ministry of the Holy Spirit, it's going to be a good thing to bring light, spiritual light, to people that are living in darkness. And then God says, I'm going to separate the light from the darkness. And in the future, he literally is going to separate the light from the darkness. So John chapter 1, verse 4, in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. Jesus is the light. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness doesn't understand it. The darkness cannot overcome it. Verse 6, there was a man sent from God whose name was John. This isn't John the Apostle, this is John the Baptist. He came as a witness to testify concerning that light, so that through him all might believe. He himself was not the light. He came only as a witness to the light. And by the way, that's what we are all called to do. We are called, just like John the Baptist, to be witnesses for the light, to be witnesses for Jesus. Verse 9, the true light that gives light to how many? To everyone was coming into the world. So Jesus brings light, spiritual light, to every single man and woman in the whole world. Now that light, I want you to come down to, let's see. Come down to verse 14. The Word became flesh. So Jesus, the Son of God, became man, and he made his dwelling among us. We have seen his glory. That's the light. The glory of God is light. The glory of the one and only Son who came from the Father, who's full of grace and truth. So Jesus Christ came to give us the truth of who God is and what he expects. If it wasn't for Jesus coming, we would have very little understanding of who the Father is. In fact, to see Jesus is to see the Father. And so Jesus came to reveal the truth about who God is. But he also came in grace, in mercy, and in love. So even though Jesus shines his light on us and tells us the truth about God and the truth that we are sinners, God also sends Jesus, but I'm full of grace. I'm full of forgiveness and mercy and love and caring, and just as we are all created in the image of God. And so we stand for truth, but we also, when we have family members that stumble, we are also full of grace and mercy and forgiveness.